Welcome to Cloudcast, where you get an inside look at St. Cloud, Florida's local government. Whether you live, work, or play here, we're bringing you the information you need to better understand your city. Cloudcast is hosted by our communications team, including Miriam Batchelder, Andrew Sullivan, Deborah Carson, and Jay B. Miller. Thanks for listening in to Cloudcast.
Welcome back, St. Cloud. We're glad to have you join us for another edition of Cloudcast. I'm Mary Emma, and I'm here in studio today with some special guests. I've got Antoinette Forbes, who is our Economic Development Director. And Antoinette, introduce our guest today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. So I have two amazing people with me here, and I'm going to only use first names so that they can pronounce their last names correctly. So I have Maria from the Small Business Development Center and Dr. Richard from Living Well Chiropractic.
Hey, glad to be here.
Very happy to be here. Thank you, Antoinette.
So, Antoinette, our Economic Development Department is doing a lot to help our businesses throughout the community. And we've recently expanded our partnership with the Small Business Development Council, and they're very heavily involved in a very much more visible way. So talk to us a little bit about what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think that you hit the nail on the head about, economic development doing so much. A lot of times people think about bringing in new businesses, and that is extremely important. But we also need to look at how do we help our existing businesses.
Right.
And a perfect example of that would be our partnership with the Small Business Development Center, as we know them, SBDC. And we have had a very friendly, cordial relationship with SBDC. They came every so often to the city of St. Cloud, but they didn't have a constant presence.
Sure.
And while they wanted to, and we wanted them to, we could not find the right fit. Where would they be stationed? Do they have enough staff? Just what does that format looks like? And so when our office reached out to the Small Business Development Center regional office, they were ecstatic about forging that partnership. So ecstatic that they said, we have to bring on new staff, which is where Maria comes in, who has an extensive amount of experience with helping our small businesses. And so that partnership meant opening up City Hall, providing office hours for SBDC to help our local businesses, everything from concept to exit planning out of the business.
So, Maria, you guys have regular office hours scheduled here at City Hall. What days are you here, and when is that available? Thursdays,
yeah.
All day?
No, 9 a.m. until about 5 p.m., sometimes a little bit later than that, depending on the consultations.
Okay, so Thursday, basically 9 to 5 by appointment, I'm assuming?
It's by appointment.
Okay. And what kind of services, if I'm a local business here, what kind of services can I obtain here at City Hall through these office hours?
We serve those people that want to start businesses and they don't have the resources at first, at hand.
Sure.
So we help them with planning, for example, also prepping them for being lender ready, and we provide a lot of other resources like marketing, government contracts, etc. But our primary focus is those businesses that are already established and they need to grow.
Okay.
And we provide the resources here. And this opportunity that Antoinette was describing is an amazing, it's more than a partnership. It's beyond that. It's a shared collaboration to help those businesses that need to thrive, but with not only the support of the city, but also the guidance, like expert guidance from experts that know businesses inside out.
Right.
A network of consultants that SBDC is that provides those things that are not necessarily available to businesses, but we can help them in order to grow.
Sure. And Antoinette, basically by your department and the city opening up this office space for them to have regular hours available, it makes it a lot easier, I would imagine, for either existing or potential new businesses to access those services rather than, you're trying to go online and figure out, it's almost like this big murky thing of how do I actually get in and get this assistance. So kudos to you and your team for stepping in and making this possible and making it a benefit for our area residents and businesses.
Absolutely. And I want to reiterate how happy we are with this partnership. And Maria won't toot toot our own horn, but she has over 20 years of Wall Street experience. And I think that's important to note, because when we talk about how do we help our businesses, as a business owner, you want someone who's been in the trenches like you have.
Right.
You want someone who can speak the language that you do, and also recognize time is money, right? So you don't have a lot of time to be working on your business while you're in your business.
Right.
So Maria can speak the language that they do. And then the other thing I think that's extremely important to mention is her services are at no cost to the businesses. That is an expense that has been absorbed by the city in order to help our local businesses.
Okay. And Maria, I know you mentioned kind of a laundry list of services that your office can help these businesses access. And you mentioned everything from marketing and business plans to access to capital, which is huge. And I know you can kind of help connect businesses with lenders and like you mentioned, get them lender ready. Talk a little bit about that. And I know we've got Dr. Richard in studio here who was able to do just that very thing. Walk us through a little bit, Dr. Richard, how that worked out for you guys and how important that's been to your success.
Oh, yeah. So last year we had just like all kinds of like what could have gone wrong went wrong. And then we had those like 2 hurricanes in 3 weeks. And even though we didn't really have any physical damage, like it just like cratered our patient numbers. And pretty much we missed out on like, it would have been like an entire month's worth of income.
Wow.
And luckily the state had like a hurricane disaster thing. And if it wasn't for, I got to give a shout out to our local representative, Paula Stark, because if it wasn't for her, like I would have completely gotten lost in the shuffle.
Sure.
And so when you're lost like an entire month's worth of income, like you get behind
That's
on
huge.
your bills pretty fast.
Absolutely.
And the state made me jump through a lot of hoops. Luckily, one of the hoops that they made me jump through was to set up some hours with the SBDC, and I spent a couple afternoons in Maria's office. She was going over a lot of different things with me. One was the funding. We did like, where are your customers coming from? What are the most valuable customers? Because when I started off as a chiropractor 15 years ago, my office has changed a lot. We're no longer just a chiropractic office. We're an integrated medicine office.
Okay.
So she said, is like your clients 15 years ago aren't the same clients that you have 15 years now down the road. So she helped identify like what customers that we really need to focus on. And in the last couple months, it really has helped.
And you know, it's interesting you say that, because I think Antoinette kind of alluded to that. You're so busy running your business day to day that sometimes you just don't have time to kind of take that step back and think about things like that. So that's where Maria and the SBDC kind of come in to kind of help you, come alongside of you and help you kind of think through and talk through some of those things. And it sounds like the strategies have been helpful for you.
Oh, yes. Very, very much so. It definitely put a spotlight on like things like when you're going through the day to day, like it's very easy to like miss things. But we have somebody who's experienced like Maria, kind of having like an outside view. She can be like, well, you really need to focus on like A, B, and C, while you're stuck focused on like all the stuff in the past. It's like you got to figure out all the new stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah. And I know a lot of times too, with other business owners that I've spoken to, you'll have people kind of come to you like they want to quote unquote help you, but in many cases they're trying to sell you something, right? They want you to advertise with them, they want to whatever. Instead of really getting that, you know, what we know with Maria is this expert level of assistance and guidance that you can just come in and, like you said, spend some afternoons, spend some quality time with her and really get that kind of coaching and that fresh perspective on things that helps you get through kind of the crisis point that you're in with, wow, we lost a month of income, and then really move forward to be successful. So, Maria, talk to us a little bit when somebody like Dr. Richard comes in, like where do you start and how do you help them proceed?
First, I would like to say that, you know, there are situations in which businesses have to go through crisis, and that's the point where they seek assistance. Yeah. But there are other instances where we can help them preempt the crisis.
Avoid the
And
crisis completely,
correct.
right.
And that, it's the ideal situation. But, business owners are always busy. They don't have the time. And it's hard sometimes to be removed from the business in order to focus on other things. And that's when we come in. But they need to know that we're here. They need to know that we can provide the support to business owners to be able to work with them to identify a need, and from there be able to work on a plan, not just to help, with when there's a crisis, but also to help that business grow. And that's where we are experts at. The strategic planning for a business to see even beyond their vision, to know that they can do more, to prepare them to even open other offices as well, if that's the case. And when there are new business owners, they don't have the expertise. They rely on, what they know, or maybe they inherited a business, or it could be many different situations. But it's our job to identify all of the different aspects where the focus should go into.
Yes.
And most of the time is the planning. And it's also, number one, is the need for capital.
Yes.
Every single business that we see requires capital because they can only do so much. We also see businesses that, unfortunately, they make a revenue, but they don't pay themselves yet. Mm-hmm. And that's not the ideal situation.
So it's
right.
Been there.
This sounds familiar, huh?
So it's really trying to identify, where we can come in and provide the advice for them to step forward. And sometimes it is also part of, going outside the comfort zone.
Yeah. And it can be scary, but I think that's where you and SBDC come in, because it's a lot less scary to jump out of that airplane if you got the parachute on you, right? And you're kind of providing that expert assistance.
And if I can say something else, the consultations we do, as Antoinette mentioned, they're free of charge. So we don't charge them for that. Yes. What we do is, as we do the counseling, we give them homework. So we want you to think about, these things and just go home, make sure that you digest it, and then come up with a plan, and then we'll review it so they can have different appointments. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea. We are partners in their journey. They don't have to be alone.
Right.
They can work with us for that.
One thing I thought you mentioned that was so critical is seeing beyond a business owner's vision. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what you don't know. And so part of our partnership is also finding different avenues to communicate with our local businesses. So not just office hours, but we're now looking at forming, what's the word I'm looking for, in-person education sessions in and around St. Cloud, so that covering a myriad of topics that will help business owners and may pique their interest, so that they can go, you know what, I never thought about, for example, e-commerce, for example. Mm-hmm. I'm used to walk-in traffic, old school cash register. And COVID has taught us that you need to have an online store in a lot of cases, or at least the ability to conduct transactions. And how do I do that? And so for us, it's trying to find different ways to reach the consumer. And in this case, our consumer is our business community.
Yes.
So, yes, we have office hours, but now we're also looking at how do we do in-person workshops as well to, again, keep tapping into that market, finding out what the need is, finding resource partners that can be able to help our business owners. That's one thing, and I'm sure Maria can attest to, and Dr. Richard, is that while there may be resources out there, the access to those resources are not always known.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Because with the SBDC, I knew of it, but I thought it was for just starting your business. I didn't really know that it was for existing businesses that are having problems and need help. So until the state was you need to do some SBDC counseling, I didn't know it was for existing businesses like mine.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that's important that you alluded to is, while access to capital is important, there is technical assistance that is equally important, because no organization is an endless pot of gold. right? But you can, as a business owner, be provided some tools to better equip you. So, the Economic Development Department is constantly trying to provide the information of our toolkit. Here are all these different partnerships that we have out that's available to help you as a business owner. Because while natural disasters will happen, that's inevitable, and a lot of times there will be these quick sources of funds that's tied to that disaster. But what about the day-to-day? It's just a regular month of May, and now you're trying to make payroll.
Sure, yeah.
You're trying to find new customers. How do you do those sort of things? And so we want to not just be in a position as a department to provide funding when it's available, but also to be able to help you produce revenue that is not necessarily tied to any sort of grant.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So that they can be self-sufficient.
Yes, exactly. And Dr. Richard, you've been through this process now. Mm-hmm. You've worked with SBDC and you've kind of been able to get through that rough patch, so to speak. Talk a little bit about the process and maybe what was, in your mind, the biggest benefit that you got from working through this process here.
So the very first meeting, it was like it was kind of like a get to know you. Like Maria wanted to know. I was like, well, how'd you get in this situation? Tell me about your business. And then after that, the second meeting it was more like kind of like ebbs and flows of business and like identifying like what kind of customers that you have and what your most valuable customers are, and then where you should be focusing more of your time and effort in marketing. And then the third time that I met with her it was in Kissimmee, and it was for different kinds of funding.
The lenders panel.
The different lenders, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That was it. So, which, as an existing business, like I didn't qualify for like a lot of them, but like they had some different kinds of like people or organizations out there that can lend existing businesses money, or to like expand your business or to do like get inventory, stuff like that. Yeah.
And I have to think that process was easier than just you trying to blindly research on your own. How do I get access to lenders who will loan money to?
Oh, yeah. People will lend you money, but like crazy interest, and you actually end up like digging yourself in like a way bigger hole.
In a bigger hole, right.
Getting knowledge and access to that kind of information is really, really valuable for businesses, for sure.
Yeah. So, Maria, we've talked a lot about the services that you provide. We've had Dr. Richard here to give us great insight on a business who's actually availed themselves of this. And thank you for coming in and chatting with us about that.
Thank you for the invite.
Is there anything else that, as far as services that you provide, that maybe we haven't really talked about a lot that you want to touch on and make sure that our businesses are aware of?
Many people come to us with this idea of getting government contracts, and we do have a program, part of SBDC, that does exactly that, and it's preparation for getting those contracts.
Okay.
There's a misconception, I would say, of how that works. Sometimes they come and they say, like, I'm ready, but they really are not.
Okay, sure.
And I would say there's preparation for that as well. It's great to have the government become your customer. Is a great idea, or maybe organizations that work with government. We also guide them with certifications, how to be like a certified business, and the likes. But I will think that one thing that I will definitely encourage anybody thinking about starting a business is that is a different mindset altogether. We are here to support them. We can hold their hand, but we are there for anything they need, from marketing to operations to the contracts that we talked about. But one thing for the existing business owners is that they have to keep in mind that the business model that they have has an expiration date.
Sure.
And whether they do it on their own, there's YouTube as well. You can watch videos, you can educate yourself. But they have to keep in mind that the business that they have today is not going to be the same in 5 years. We have technology changing so quickly.
Yes.
And the need for reinvention is important. So come talk to us. We are there to provide the guidance that we need. And the beautiful thing about the city of St. Cloud that I like to say, they're not just encouraging entrepreneurship with the programs that they are doing, but they're also investing in them. And that is good to see because the resources are here. There will be more resources as well. And just take advantage of that. Make your appointment. Come to SBDC. I'm here on Thursdays again, and I'm happy to give them, like any guidance that they need.
Well, thank you so much for being with us in studio today. You guys are doing great work and providing a lot of great services. Dr. Richard, thank you for coming in and sharing with us your story. Internet, how do they access this service? How can people go online and schedule these appointments here at St. Cloud City Hall?
Sure. So I'm going to let Maria answer that because they actually schedule it directly through her.
Yes. So they can go to our website. It's Florida SBDC. That is fsbdc.gov. And there is a button that they can see all the way on top for request a consultation. They can click on that. They will need to fill out a form. And that form is routed to our program manager who is going to schedule the consultation. There will be a phone call just to take some information about the person opening the business or the business owner. And then they set up the appointment.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you. And I know, Internet, if people have questions about it, they can always call your office here at City Hall as well. And we're happy to help you get connected to this amazing resource. So thank you for being in studio today. Appreciate the great work you're doing here for our local St. Cloud businesses.
Thanks for having me.
And we will see you next time on Cloudcast.
That's it for this edition of Cloudcast. Don't forget to like, follow, rate, and review, and we'll see you next time on Cloudcast.